how's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another review. So today, guys, we are sitting down for a special one. Oh boy, silly old bear, man. We've got Winnie-the-Pooh, Blood and Honey. So obviously I had a lot of thoughts going into this one before I saw it. First off, I didn't actually see the trailer. So small story, the main one, back couple months ago when it released, the Grinch slasher film with Art the Clown. Obviously, this was mentioned way before that. This had a bigger, following, bigger production, and also definitely much more care put toward the source material. But I will say this. I went into the main one, and I was like, you know what? It's not going to be good, but it's a Grinch horror film. We're finally getting it with Art the Clown. I will go in giving it the benefit of the doubt as much as I can. And it was a stinker, obviously, and I didn't hate that movie, but it was enough for me not really to give at all of a fuck about this movie. Now, I'm just gonna say it, I didn't see the trailer for this film at all. I did not have any faith in this movie after seeing the main one. It was also a Fathom event movie, which... Don't even get me started on Fathom. $17 for a 0% movie? There was no good signs pointing toward this movie. Now, I will say this much. Without giving away my full thoughts of the movie, I will say this much. They have already confirmed that a Blood and Honey 2 is officially on the way. They also announced some time back that this is actually going to build toward more films up this one's alley along the way. Talking about like a Thor horror film, even a Peter Pan one, even a Bambi one. But I will say this. If this team that did the movie that I just saw is attached to all these ones, I'm officially in, guys. Also, what the fuck is up with bear movies lately? We get this one and then we get fucking Cocaine Bear next week? What is happening? But yes, guys, let's sit down and talk about Blood and Honey because I have a lot of thoughts on this one. So right off the bat, getting into like my first initial thoughts of actually viewing the movie, this one surprised me right off the bat in the sense where this one wasn't exactly like how the main one was handled. I mean, it does kind of follow like the same general route as the main one where, you know, this definitely follows more or less loosely the original lore of this, you know, piece of, you know, Winnie-the-Pooh character and everything and all the background of the actual, again, lore of that. You know how in the main one it was narrated throughout the movie and had very Dr. Seuss-esque narration to it. Where, again, this one does follow the same general route, but in a manner that was much more mature and much more, again, just cared for. And it really surprised me, especially in the film setup, because I'll touch up on this more as I go through the review, but this really does feel like an actual Pooh-based horror film. Everything in the sense of this director really does feel like he brushed up on Pooh lore before creating this film. It wasn't just like, oh wow, you know, we can make this movie now. Let's go to the bizarre fucking routes of actually being the people that do that. No, I mean, obviously this wasn't going to be an, you know, explosive movie or anything, but I kind of get the sense that the director was like, all right, guys, seriously. Obviously, people are not going to take this movie seriously. And obviously, there's only so much, you know, that we can actually give as an actual cinematic success with a movie like this. But goddamn it, I want to be a director. And while I do want to make this movie, it sounds fun and everything, I still want to make a good slasher film. And that exactly is what this film feels like. And it really fucking surprised the hell out of me. And not only the story, but again, just the setup in general and everything building around it too. This really does feel like the best it could have been, more or less. Which, obviously, the story, yes. Again, I did not see the trailer, but from what I gathered from the movie is that Christopher Robin comes back to the 100 Acre Wood to visit the gang and everything. Only he is an adult, and this has been some time after he has left. He comes back with his girlfriend, and basically Pooh and Piglet, more than others, have felt completely betrayed and abandoned, and when he actually returns to visit them, they are now out for revenge and basically slaughter anyone that comes into these woods. Now, I will say this. Obviously, this is going to be a movie where you do have to stretch some shit to actually make this movie something. Which, obviously, I know that this is going to sound very weird to, like, nitpick on this kind of a movie, but, for example, Christopher Robin is an adult where the premise is that he actually comes back to the 100-Acre Wood, which is actually a real place where, obviously, the beloved tale when we were all kids, it's like, this obviously wasn't real. This is like the kid's imagination. These are stuffed fucking animals. But I gotta say, obviously, yes, they had to stretch some things to make this thing happen. And obviously for the whole public domain thing with this, yes, let's make a fucking horror movie out of this. We can do this. Just like The Grinch. And yes, obviously, again, like I said earlier, it's only expected for that to be, to some degree, no matter how high up or how far, yeah, that was going to be fucking ridiculous. But I will say this. Surprisingly, this was actually a very, like, more or less, pretty good thrill ride. Not only in the sense of where they were going to go with this concept, but how they actually crafted it. There are things, again, like I said with the Mean One, where it does feel very inspired by the original source material. You know, you're getting like storybook sequences and little grainy old school like flashbacks and stuff like the original source material includes. But what I was more surprised than a lot of things was that this actually did feel like more of just a B slasher horror film. And I was surprised about that because I wasn't watching this a whole lot of time just like, wow, this is so stupid. Oh my god, it's a Pooh and Piglet slasher film. No, I actually bought a lot of what the story was setting up, and again, I saw this more than less, just as another slasher film, and a lot of the stuff was actually pretty well done. You know, this just felt like, you know, your typical dumb teenagers or whatever in a cabin in the woods being stalked by some fucking, you know, maniac. Which reminds me about something else that I want to talk about is how they actually transformed the 100-Acre Wood. Now, it doesn't do anything new, obviously, or anything explosive as far as transforming, you know, your typical woods slasher film, but it's just the attention to detail. It's for the amount of things that I was genuinely surprised and that, you know, was so much better than I was expecting in this movie. And I mean it in every sense of the word when I say this is just another B-movie slasher. It doesn't feel anything more than your typical one. Even like, you know, going back to like some of the actual classics. Like there was times in this movie where I was just watching the movie just as a viewer and then just randomly something from like Friday the 13th would come to my head. Where, you know, someone's sitting on a dock or there's like a misty lake in the background. And again, just this doesn't feel like a cash grab, public domain horror movie stupid idea. This actually does feel like more of a slasher. Like, what I will say is that whoever directed this movie, I don't know their actual name, but I give them a lot of credit because this does feel, again, more or less like they just wanted to make a slasher, an original slasher. And they took this idea because they could, which does feel a little bit weird because you watch this movie and you're like, I don't get the full feeling, the whole general gist that this guy wanted to make a parody slasher. It seems like he just wanted to make a slasher, but he had this idea available, so he kind of went with it. So it does feel like a little bit janky in that sense, a little bit weird. But, you know, there is just actual buildup. There's an actual narrative. There is an actual story, which I will say, again, like a lot of your typical B-movie slashers, this is one of those films that the more it plays out, like the longer it goes on, characters do kind of feel a little bit more just kind of come and go and everything, a little bit more throwaway. Even the story, as like the further that the movie goes on, the story gets kind of less and less existent and less actually like touched on and cared for. But in the same sense, I'm not really against that because I kind of get it. This wasn't something that needed to have like a huge, 100-page script for it. It's already a goofy idea that no matter how hard you try, people are going to look at this thing like a ridiculous cash grab throwaway parody. But I was just surprised that, again, how much better than expected things were and how many things grew on me. Another very surprising one was actually Winnie-the-Pooh's character. So from the posters and like little stuff I saw on the internet, that's where I got the main feeling and the main like kind of expectation where, yeah, this is going to be exactly what you expect. But goddamn, he really grew on me. Not just the way he looked, but even the sense of like how his character was helmed. Which another thing that actually worked for me is that, like a lot of typical slashers, where you get the sense like, like a lot of the tropes that usually don't work, they do in here. Where, the character, the stalker, is very slow. He doesn't have a whole, like, thought out plan. A lot of the times where he could actually get something done and attack someone or like really finish off something, he doesn't. But you kind of accept in here because you're like, well, I mean, this was just an innocent teddy bear that now has abandonment issues. It's not like he has a huge motive planned, like, you know what I mean? Another thing that I am very excited to say is that, which I am very surprised about as well, is that this was a very surprisingly fun theater experience. Now, for me, that could just be because my theater was actually pretty packed. And I think that more or less everybody that was in my theater was kind of expecting the same thing, but it was also equally like surprised at how it actually turned out. So it just felt good. It felt like everybody was kind of in the same place. Everybody felt the same, and everyone was really just, an audience that was together on this film. But yeah, I don't know, guys. I was just very surprised at how this turned out. Again, this does feel like a better film than it was really making out to be, and I kind of feel bad about that because I know that no one is going to give this the benefit of the doubt. There's really no reason to. You have no actual like reasoning or proof that this is going to be an actually decent horror film. Again, this was only going to go so far as being an actual worthy horror film. It is only inevitable for this film to have some cheesiness to it and only to go so far, but I will say that it is one of the actual best parody horror films, if you want to call it that I have seen, and I was very close to giving this a positive review, guys. As far as a Fathom event, obviously paying like $17 a ticket or some shit, I don't know if it's worth that, but it is better than you will be expecting. And if this was your general admission ticket, I don't see, this being one of the biggest disappointments that you're spending your money on. But yes, guys, that is going to do it for my review of Winnie-the-Pooh Blood and Honey. I know that this was supposed to be out only for one day, but I heard from, multiple sources that this was going to be playing out for like a full-on week like they did with Jeepers Creepers Reborn. So yeah, guys, if you are willing to spend $17 on a ticket or some shit, and you are expecting this to be a total stinker, but you are still willing to see it, I do think that you will be pleasantly surprised. But yes, guys, that is going to do it for my review. I will be seeing you shortly, and I hope you guys are having a great night. Thank you guys so much for watching, and take care.